The tracker's boot sinks in wet sand as Stormfront shudders. A horncrest fractures the dunes. Diablos, sandstorm incarnate, scarring the sky. Notes harness the scarring, the whisper. Fury asterisk territoriality is memory, not impists into siege. Asterisk thunder growls low, a drumbeat to the wyvern's wrath. Stormfront, the sea of glass and grit does not shudders, merely radiate retaliates. The old world's empires harnessed the Sandsea's fury. They bent tempests into siege. But the Wyverian kin who built their spires on shifting glass forgot. Diablos did not. Ragathi rebelled. Each scarred maw a scar on the conqueror's throat. The storms were never natural. They were appeal's last breath channeled through scaled sinew, a rebellion etched in grit. The desert's wrath was a weapon, now it is a warning. The glyphs in MH1's desert ruins show horned titans clashing with storm-cloaked invaders. Their war was not for dominance but survival. The Sandsea's tempests, once tamed by a civilization that bent weather to its will, became a cage for the world's breath. Diablos did not rage without cause. It was a general in a war without drums, its horns not weapons but fulcrum-shifting dunes to shatter siege machines, summoning blizzards to bury outposts. The old world's deserts were not wild. They were a rebellion held in suspension, their ecology a relic of that ancient struggle. What fell here left no kings, only echoes. The Shrade wrote their own history in stone, but the sands remember another truth. Diablos guards what remains of it. Its fury is not chaos, it is the last gasp of a world that learned to fight back. How many other landscapes hide wars we call natural? The storms do not rise from hunger, they are a language, a scar. When Diablos charges, the Sandsea trembles not in fear, but in memory. The air thickens with ozone, the scent of burnt resin, and the sky splits end like a wound. Guild researchers who survived the 13th millennial hunt's southern incursion described it, not a tempest, but a weapon reawakening. The same weapon that once drowned the iron fleets of the old world's eastern front. Ancient glyphs etched into the Stormspire cliffs depict a different monster. Not the horned tyrant of modern legend, but a storm bound in scales, its breath shattering siege engines, its claws carving canals to flood invaders' march. These carvings predate the Shrade dynasty's rise by centuries, during which the old world's warlords carved empires into the Sandsea's bones. Their aqueducts still lie half-buried, shattered by floods no rain could explain. The Elder Dragon weapon, that cursed artifact now displayed in the catacombs of Nursula, was not the first attempt to bind Diablos. It was the 17th, the Guild's own archives, sealed until the 2024 excavation of the Redspire Wastes, confirm this. Survivors of the 19th century Diablos hunt spoke of a rage that wasn't rage, a pattern in the chaos, a rhythm matching the glyph's war chants. The old world called it a monster, the Sandsea called it a general. What if the storms were not a trait but a tactic? The same spiraling winds that blind pursuers today once drowned armies that sought to drain the sea's lifeblood. The same heat that turns dunes to glass now mirrors the volcanic ash that choked siege towers. Every sandstorm is a requiem, every roar a war cry fossilized in wind. The rebellion did not win, it learned to outlast. And as the Guild drills deeper, as excavators unearth more shattered obelisks with Diablo's sigil, one truth hardens: the Sandsea's storms are not a curse. They are a countdown, awaiting the day the bound general breaks its chains. How many other natural disasters are the aftershocks of wars we buried? The sands remember, beneath their restless breath, a war was etched into the wind. Wyverians did not tame Diablos. They answered its call, a kingdom's shadow stretched across the Sandsea. The Shrade precursor, hungering for ore the living dunes, rose not by Diablos, did not chance flee, waited. Invaders marched, rose not by Dia but by will. Weighted sand became a weapon, heat a furnace. The Wyverians, bound to the beast, guided its fury. Shrade's legions were swallowed whole, their forges smothered in dust. Yet victory bred no peace. The rebellion's cost was measured in generations. The Wyverians vanished. Diablos, unchained, turned its wrath inward. What remains of that ancient rage? The tempests still dance, but now they rage against empty skies. Shrade's fall, a footnote. Shrade's fall, Fatalis, the bound general, shattered its crown. but the Sandsea's grief is older than the dragon's curse. Appeals whisper, lost between storm and stone. How many other winds carry the breath of fallen civilizations? The storms do not forget, they wait for a listener who might finally hear. The guild's sieges follow a pattern older than their blueprints. Migration events are not mere overpopulation, they are recurring offensives, echoes of a war Diablos did not start. Frontier logs from the Sandsea's edge describe retreats timed to storm cycles, a rhythm matching Wyverian guerrilla tactics. The riders who mapped these patterns called it savagery. They did not hear the drums beneath the dust. The guild regulates monster populations, yet their archives omit the truth. Diablos was once a shield, not a threat. Old-world excavations reveal storm chambers, their walls scarred by claws and Wyverian sigils. A civilization long erased harnessed the tempests, turning them against their own kin. Diablos did not flee the storms. It fought within them what fell in those gales. Not just beasts, but a regime that bound the weather to its will. The Shade Chronicles name one enemy, but the sand remembers more. Diablos' migrations are not instinct, they are inheritance. Each surge across the dunes reclaims ground stolen by hands that shaped hurricanes into weapons. The guild calls it population control. The riders call it aggression, but the storms carry another name, liberation. The Sandsea's fury was not nature's whim. It was Appeal's cry channeled through scales and sinew. Diablos did not conquer the storms, it broke them free. The wind still howls through the ruins. How many listeners have mistaken its song for chaos? The storms do not forget. They wait for a world ready to hear. The guild's bestiary falters. Storms that carve the Sandsea funneling scorching winds, crushing sand resemble siege engines no scholar can name. Why do these tempests obey Diablos? The glyphs in desert ruins answer what the records refuse, a civilization's final stand. Not against beasts, against architects. The storms were not chaos, they were counterstrike. Elder dragons dwell where taxonomy dissolves. Diablos, the guild insists, is predator, but the glyphs show claws raking invaders from dunes, storms flattening fortresses. A rebellion etched in weather. Who built the walls Diablos now shatters? The answer lies buried deeper than bone. The Shade Kingdom was not first, nor last. The storms remember every hand that chained the Sandsea. Every tower that fed its fury to a cage. What waits when the storms subside? A war not ended, only entombed. How many more truths does the guild silence? The Sandsea's storms were not nature's whim, but Shrade's weapon. During the MH1 era, their empire stretched across the old world, bending tempests to conquer. Diablos, once guardians of balance, became rebelsionaling those storms back on their makers. This was no mindless rage. Each sandstorm was a rebellion, each whirlwind a strike against an empire that enslaved the skies. When Fatalis fell, Shrade crumbled, but their poisoned weather lingers. The storms still carve scars into the land, a testament to a war fought not with swords but with climate itself. The guild maps these patterns, yet omits the truth. Diablos did not merely resist, they unraveled a system designed to dominate. The ecology bears the cost. Every buried ruin, every toxic dune, whispers of a civilization that dared to weaponize the heavens. What remains is not just a relic of war but a warning. The sand remembers, and it waits. The old world breathes with the echoes of that rebellion, its lungs still choked by the ashes of a forgotten conflict. To study the storms is to study a history the guild fears to name. For in every gust there is a ghost, in every sandstorm a scream that will not be silenced. The guild's mandate is not to kill, but to balance, yet balance crumbles when the scales were forged in blood. The Sandsea's storms are no accident of climatethi, are the breath of a weapon left unfinished, its gears buried beneath dunes that shift like the tongues of the silenced. Diablos did not rage for hunger or instinct alone. It raged because the Shrade Kingdom's ironclad legions had turned its ancestors into slaves, mining their fury to power war machines that carved the old world into a map of conquest. When the rebellion came, it was not a roar but a whisper, Diablo's kind refusing to burn, choosing instead to let the storms rise as a shield, a smothering shroud that swallowed Shrade cities whole. The guild calls this territorial aggression, the hunter calls it dangerous, but the sand remembers. It remembers the screams of soldiers drowned in silica, the slow collapse of a kingdom that thought itself eternal. Now, every time a hunter raises a blade, they carve a question into the wind: who are you truly hunting? The guild fears naming this truth, for it cracks the foundation of their creed. To regulate a monster is to claim mastery, but what if the monster was the revolution? What if the storms are not chaos, but the last gasp of a people who learn to weaponize their own suffering? The Shrade name still haunts history, but their bones are fertilizer for a war that never ended. The guild's tools, poison, traps, treatisaire child's play against a weapon that never needed to be built. It was always there, waiting. How many more generations will the hunter chase shadows, while the real war blows through their hands in grains of ash? Beneath the sand's hiss, glyphs in the desert ruins whisper of a weapon Diablos could not bury. The storm was no accidental rebellion channeled through scale and sand, turning the sea into a shield. What if the old world's fall was not a loss, but a transfer of power? Elder dragons, not monsters, but unsolved variables in a war where victory meant becoming legend. Listen closer. The wind carries more than rage. 55. What if the Sandsea's storms are not nature's wrath but Diablo's final, unrelenting cry against an empire that still lingers in the old world's shadows? His territorial rage was a scar left by ancient chains. Centuries before the Elder Dragon weapon's fall, civilizations carved their greed into his bones. They thought his fury blind. They were wrong. He turned their own machines against them, storms as vengeance, dunes as buried ruins. The old world built on his pain. Now, every hunter who treads this way